I never thought a single phone call could unravel everything I believed about my life. It was a Tuesday evening, the kind where Seattle's rain taps against the windows like impatient fingers, when my phone buzzed across my desk. I was grading essays, red pen in hand, mind numb from reading the same recycled analysis of The Great Gatsby for the 100th time. The caller ID showed Mom, and I almost didn't answer. She'd been calling more frequently since moving into Evergreen Meadows, the assisted living facility where she'd been for the past 6 months. Usually it was about a missed medication or a complaint about the food. I sighed, set down my pen, and picked up. Her voice was different this time. Not the usual cheerful complaint or the confused rambling that had become more common. This was sharp, urgent, almost frightening. "Honey," she said, breathing fast like she'd been running, "I need you to explain something to me." I straightened in my chair. "Mom, what's wrong? Are you okay?" There was a rustling sound, papers being shuffled. I was going through some old documents, organizing things like you told me to, and I found this letter. It's addressed to you, but it was mixed in with my tax returns from years ago. I don't know how it got there. My stomach tightened. "What kind of letter?" She paused, and I could hear her breathing, quick and shallow. "It's from the Pacific Northwest Bank. It says there's an account in your name." I frowned. "Mom, I bank with First Union. You know that." Another pause, longer this time. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. "This letter says the account balance is $2,800,000. The world stopped. Not slowed, stopped. The rain against the window, the hum of my refrigerator, my own heartbeat. Everything went silent for one impossible moment. Then it all rushed back at once. "What?" The word came out strangled, disbelieving. "Mom, that's not possible. That's a mistake or a scam or—" "I'm looking at it right now," she interrupted, her voice steadier now, more insistent. "It has your name, your social security number, an account number, a statement dated from 3 months ago. Honey, why is there $2,800,000 in your name?" I felt cold, the kind of cold that starts in your chest and spreads outward until your fingers go numb. "I never opened any account," I said too loud, my voice cracking. "Mom, I don't have that kind of money. I don't have any money. I'm still paying off student loans, for God's sake." She was quiet for a moment. "Then where did it come from?" I didn't have an answer. I sat there in my small apartment, surrounded by stacks of ungraded papers and empty coffee mugs, staring at nothing. $2.8 million in my name. A fortune I'd never seen, never touched, never even knew existed. And someone, somewhere, had put it there. I told my mom I'd call her back. I hung up and sat perfectly still, trying to make sense of what I'd just heard. This had to be a mistake, a clerical error. Someone at the bank had typed the wrong social security number, attached the wrong name to someone else's fortune. That was the only explanation that made sense. But my mom had my social security number right there on the letter. She'd read it to me twice. It matched. I grabbed my laptop and opened a browser, typing in Pacific Northwest Bank with shaking fingers. The website loaded, clean and professional, a real bank with real branches. I clicked on Account Login and stared at the fields. Username, password. I'd never created an account here. I didn't have a username, but there was a link that said, Forgot username. I clicked it. It asked for my social security number and date of birth. I entered them, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Processing. Please wait. Then a new screen appeared. Username found. A password reset link has been sent to the email address on file. I checked my email. Nothing. Checked my spam folder. Nothing. Refreshed. Still nothing. Maybe the email address was old, from a different provider I'd used years ago. I tried to remember what email I had 15 years ago. Had I even had an email 15 years ago? I'd been in college, barely 22, using whatever free service was popular at the time. I couldn't even remember the address. I sat back, staring at the screen, feeling helpless. Somewhere in the digital ether, there was an account with my name on it, holding a fortune I'd never earned, never touched, never even knew existed. And someone, somewhere, had put it there. I told my mom I'd call her back. I hung up and sat perfectly still, trying to make sense of what I'd just heard. This had to be a mistake, a clerical error. Someone at the bank had typed the wrong social security number, attached the wrong name to someone else's fortune. That was the only explanation that made sense. But my mom had my social security number right there on the letter. She'd read it to me twice. It matched. I grabbed my laptop and opened a browser, typing in Pacific Northwest Bank with shaking fingers. The website loaded, clean and professional, a real bank with real branches. I clicked on Account Login and stared at the fields. Username, password. I'd never created an account here. I didn't have a username, but there was a link that said, Forgot username. I clicked it. It asked for my social security number and date of birth. I entered them, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Processing. Please wait. Then a new screen appeared. Username found. A password reset link has been sent to the email address on file. I checked my email. Nothing. Checked my spam folder. Nothing. Refreshed. Still nothing. Maybe the email address was old, from a different provider I'd used years ago. I tried to remember what email I had 15 years ago. Had I even had an email 15 years ago? I'd been in college, barely 22, using whatever free service was popular at the time. I couldn't even remember the address. I sat back, staring at the screen, feeling helpless. Somewhere in the digital ether, there was an account with my name on it, holding a fortune I'd never earned, never touched, never even knew existed. And someone, somewhere, had put it there. I told my mom I'd call her back. I hung up and sat perfectly still, trying to make sense of what I'd just heard. This had to be a mistake, a clerical error. Someone at the bank had typed the wrong social security number, attached the wrong name to someone else's fortune. That was the only explanation that made sense. But my mom had my social security number right there on the letter. She'd read it to me twice. It matched. I grabbed my laptop and opened a browser, typing in Pacific Northwest Bank with shaking fingers. The website loaded, clean and professional, a real bank with real branches. I clicked on Account Login and stared at the fields. Username, password. I'd never created an account here. I didn't have a username, but there was a link that said, Forgot username. I clicked it. It asked for my social security number and date of birth. I entered them, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Processing. Please wait. Then a new screen appeared. Username found. A password reset link has been sent to the email address on file. I checked my email. Nothing. Checked my spam folder. Nothing. Refreshed. Still nothing. Maybe the email address was old, from a different provider I'd used years ago. I tried to remember what email I had 15 years ago. Had I even had an email 15 years ago? I'd been in college, barely 22, using whatever free service was popular at the time. I couldn't even remember the address. I sat back, staring at the screen, feeling helpless. Somewhere in the digital ether, there was an account with my name on it, holding a fortune I'd never earned, never touched, never even knew existed. And someone, somewhere, had put it there. I told my mom I'd call her back. I hung up and sat perfectly still, trying to make sense of what I'd just heard. This had to be a mistake, a clerical error. Someone at the bank had typed the wrong social security number, attached the wrong name to someone else's fortune. That was the only explanation that made sense. But my mom had my social security number right there on the letter. She'd read it to me twice. It matched. I grabbed my laptop and opened a browser, typing in Pacific Northwest Bank with shaking fingers. The website loaded, clean and professional. A real bank with real branches. I clicked on Account Login and stared at the fields. Username, password. I'd never created an account here. I didn't have a username. But there was a link that said Forgot Username. I clicked it. It asked for my social security number and date of birth. I entered them, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. Processing. Please wait. Then a new screen appeared. Username found. A password reset link has been sent to the email address on file. I checked my email. Nothing. Checked my spam folder. Nothing. Refreshed. Still nothing. Maybe the email address was old, from a different provider I'd used years ago. I tried to remember what email I'd had 15 years ago. Had I even had an email 15 years ago? I'd been in college, barely 22, using whatever free service was popular at the time. I couldn't even remember the address. I sat back, staring at the screen, feeling helpless. Somewhere in the digital ether, there was an account with my name on it holding a fortune I'd never earned, and I had no way to access it. Unless I went to the bank in person. The thought made my stomach turn. What would I even say? Hi, I think there might be millions of dollars in my name, but I didn't put them there. They'd think I was insane. Or worse, they'd think I was trying to commit fraud. But I had to know. I had to understand. I couldn't just ignore this. Not when my own social security number was attached to it. Not when my mother was sitting in a care facility holding a piece of paper that said I was rich. I looked at the clock. 9:15 at night. The bank was closed. I'd have to wait until morning. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the rain, my mind spinning through possibilities. Had I opened an account years ago and forgotten about it? No. Impossible. You don't forget about opening a bank account, especially one with millions in it. Has someone stolen my identity? But why would an identity thief put money into an account, not take it out? Maybe it was inheritance. But from who? My dad died when I was 12, and he'd been a high school teacher. No fortune there. No rich relatives I knew of. No mysterious benefactors. Had I won something? The lottery? A lawsuit settlement? I would remember that. People don't forget winning millions of dollars. Every explanation I came up with crumbled under its own weight. By the time dawn broke, gray and wet through my window, I was exhausted and terrified. I called in sick to work, something I almost never did. Told the school secretary I had a stomach bug. She sounded concerned, told me to feel better. I barely heard her. I was already pulling on jeans and a sweater, grabbing my wallet and keys, rehearsing what I'd say at the bank. At 8:30, I was standing outside Pacific Northwest Bank's downtown branch, waiting for them to unlock the doors. A security guard let me in at 9, and I walked up to the reception desk on shaking legs. The woman behind the desk smiled professionally. "Good morning. How can I help you?" I opened my mouth. I closed it. I opened it again. "I think there might be an account here in my name," I said carefully, "but I don't remember opening it, and I need to verify if it's real." She didn't blink, probably heard weird requests all the time. "Of course. Do you have the account number?" I shook my head. "But I have this." I handed her the letter my mom had photographed and texted to me last night. The woman took it, scanned it with practiced eyes, then looked up at me with a slightly different expression. More careful now. "Let me get a manager," she said. That's when I knew this was real. 5 minutes later, I was sitting in a small office across from a woman named Patricia Chen, the branch manager. She was maybe 50, with thin glasses and a calm professional demeanor that suggested she'd seen everything. She had the letter in front of her, along with a computer screen I couldn't see. "Miss Brennan," she said, folding her hands on the desk. Can you confirm your social security number for me? I recited it. She nodded, typing something. And your date of birth? I told her. More typing. She looked at the screen for a long moment, then back at me. I can confirm that there is an account here in your name, she said slowly. It was opened 15 years ago. My mouth went dry. I didn't open it. Her expression didn't change. According to our records, you did. We have the original documentation on file, including your signature. I shook my head. That's impossible. 15 years ago, I was in college. I was broke. I worked part-time at a coffee shop just to make rent. I couldn't have opened an account with millions of dollars. Patricia's eyes narrowed slightly. The account didn't start with millions. It started with an initial deposit of $500. Additional deposits were made over time. I stared at her. How much is in the account now? She glanced at the screen. As of this morning, the balance is $2,803,472.19. The number was so precise, so impossibly real, that I felt dizzy. I gripped the armrests of my chair. I need to see the records, I said, my voice barely steady. All of them. Who made the deposits? When? Where did the money come from? Patricia hesitated. I can provide you with account statements, but some of that information is confidential, depending on the source of the funds. I leaned forward. It's my account, my name, my social security number. I have a right to know. She studied me for a moment, then nodded slowly. Give me a few minutes. She left the office. I sat there alone, surrounded by generic corporate art and the faint smell of carpet cleaner, trying not to hyperventilate. This was real. The account was real. The money was real. And I had no idea where it came from. Patricia returned with a thick folder. She sat down, opened it, and began laying out documents in front of me. Here's the original account opening form, she said, sliding a piece of paper across the desk. I looked at it. There was my name, typed neatly, my social security number, an address I'd lived at 15 years ago, a tiny apartment near the university, and at the bottom, a signature. I picked up the paper, holding it close, studying the signature. It looked like mine, the loops, the slant, the way the B and Brennan curled at the bottom, but something was off, slightly too neat, slightly too controlled. I've seen my own signature 1,000 times. This was close, but not quite right. This isn't my signature. Patricia's expression remained neutral. Are you certain? I nodded. I'm certain. She made a note on a pad of paper. We'll need to investigate that. In the meantime, let me show you the deposit history. She pulled out another document, a long spreadsheet printed on multiple pages. I scanned it, my eyes catching on the numbers. Monthly deposits. Starting 15 years ago, $20,000. Then $25,000. Then $20,000 again. Over and over, like clockwork, for 10 years. Then 5 years ago, they stopped. I looked up at Patricia. Where did this money come from? She pointed to a column labeled Source. Every entry said the same thing. Wire transfer, Meridian Holdings, LLC. I'd never heard of Meridian Holdings. What is that? I asked. She shook her head. I don't have that information. It's a registered business entity, but beyond that, I can't say. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Can you give me the registration information? An address? A contact person? She hesitated. I can request it, but it may take some time. I left the bank an hour later, clutching a folder full of documents, my mind reeling. $2.8 million, deposited over 10 years by a company I'd never heard of, in an account I'd never opened, with a signature that wasn't quite mine. I sat in my car in the parking lot, staring at the rain streaking down the windshield, and felt the weight of it settle over me. This wasn't a miracle. This wasn't a blessing. This was something else. Something is wrong, and I had to figure out what it was before it destroyed me. If you've ever had your entire reality crack open, drop the word frozen in the comments. I need to know I'm not alone in this. And if you want to hear what happened next, because trust me, it gets worse, hit that subscribe button. You're not going to believe what I found out about Meridian Holdings. I didn't go home right away. I couldn't. The idea of sitting in my apartment, surrounded by the mundane evidence of my ordinary life, bills piled on the counter, lesson plans scattered across the table, felt unbearable. How could I grade papers about symbolism and metaphor when my entire existence had just become one giant, terrifying question mark? So I drove. Aimlessly, at first, through the gray Seattle streets, past coffee shops and bookstores and people living their normal lives. Eventually, I found myself parked outside a public library downtown. If I couldn't make sense of this, maybe I could at least start digging. Inside, I found an empty computer terminal in the back corner and searched for Meridian Holdings, LLC. The first few results were useless, generic business directories listing the name with no details. Then I found a registration record from the Delaware Division of Corporations, Meridian Holdings, LLC, registered in 2007, dissolved in 2018. Registered agent, David Castellano. I stared at the name, David Castellano. It meant nothing to me. I'd never met anyone with that name, never worked with anyone, never went to school with anyone, never even casually known anyone named David Castellano. I wrote it down anyway, adding it to the growing list of questions I had no answers for. I searched for David Castellano next. Hundreds of results, too common a name. I tried narrowing it. David Castellano, Delaware, David Castellano, Meridian Holdings, David Castellano, Seattle. Still nothing useful. Just LinkedIn profiles and Facebook pages and obituaries that didn't match. I sat back, frustrated, rubbing my eyes. I needed help. Professional help. Someone who knew how to investigate things like this, who had access to databases and records I couldn't reach. I needed a private investigator. The thought felt absurd. I was a high school English teacher. I lived paycheck to paycheck. Private investigators were for movies, for rich people with messy divorces and corporate espionage. But I also had nearly $3 million sitting in an account I didn't open, deposited by a company I'd never heard of, run by a man whose name I didn't recognize. I pulled out my phone and searched for private investigators in Seattle. A dozen names came up. I picked one at random, a listing for Frank Delaney Investigations, with a website that looked professional but not too slick, the kind of operation run by one person, not a firm. I called the number. A man answered on the third ring. Delaney? I hesitated. Hi, my name is Sarah Brennan, and I think I need help with something. It's complicated. Complicated how? I took a breath. I found out there's an account in my name with almost $3 million in it. I didn't open it. I don't know where the money came from. And the company that deposited it is run by someone I've never heard of. Silence on the other end. Are you still in Seattle? Yes. Can you meet me in an hour? There's a coffee shop on Pike near the market. It's called Grounded. I'll be there. I hung up and sat in the library for another 10 minutes, trying to steady my breathing. Then I drove to Pike Place, parked in an overpriced garage, and walked through the rain to the coffee shop. Inside, it smelled like espresso and wet wool. A man in his 50s, gray hair, weathered face, sat in the back corner. He looked up when I walked in and nodded once. I ordered a coffee I didn't want and sat down across from him. Frank Delaney, he said, not offering his hand. I nodded. Sarah Brennan. He pulled out a small notebook and a pen. Tell me everything. So I did. I told him about the phone call from my mom, the letter, the visit to the bank, the account I'd never opened, the deposits from Meridian Holdings, the name David Castellano. He listened without interrupting, occasionally jotting down notes. When I finished, he leaned back and studied me. You touched the money? He asked. I shook my head. Never. I didn't even know it existed until yesterday. He nodded slowly. Good. Don't. Not until we figure out where it came from. Can you do that? I asked. Find out where it came from? He tapped his pen against the notebook. I can try. Meridian Holdings is dissolved, but corporations leave trails. Registration documents, tax filings, business licenses. If David Castellano was the registered agent, there's a record somewhere. Might take some time, might cost you. I swallowed. How much? 1,500 retainers. Then we see where it goes. $1,500 was more than I had in my checking account, but I nodded anyway. Okay. He slid a contract across the table. I signed it, gave him what information I had, and left feeling slightly less alone. At least someone else knew. At least someone else was looking. 3 days later, Frank called. Got something, he said. Meet me at the same place. 1 hour. I was there in 45 minutes. Frank was already in the booth, a folder in front of him. I sat down, heart racing. What did you find? He opened the folder and pulled out a printout. Meridian Holdings LLC was registered in Delaware, like you said, dissolved in 2018. But before that, it had business activity in Nevada, California, and Washington, mostly financial services, at least on paper. What does that mean, on paper? I asked. Frank's expression darkened. Means it was probably a shell company, used for moving money around. Legal, technically, but the kind of thing people do when they don't want scrutiny. I felt cold again. And David Castellano? Frank slid another paper across the table. A death certificate. I stared at it. David Michael Castellano. Date of death, March 14th, 2019. Place of death, Clark County, Nevada. Cause, motor vehicle accident. Age, 41. He's dead? I whispered. Frank nodded. Died 5 years ago. No spouse listed. No known children. No estate filed in Nevada or Delaware. Guy basically disappeared. I looked up at him. So, who put the money in my account? Frank leaned forward. That's the question. Castellano set up the account 15 years ago, probably using your identity. Deposits came from Meridian Holdings, which he controlled. But 5 years ago, right around the time he died, the deposits stopped. The account just sat there, growing interest. But why? I asked, my voice rising. Why would he use my name? I don't even know him. Frank looked at me carefully. Are you sure about that? I opened my mouth to say yes, absolutely, of course I was sure. But something stopped me. A flicker of something, a half-formed memory I couldn't quite grasp. I don't know, I said slowly. Maybe. I don't remember anyone named David Castellano. Frank closed the folder. Then we need to figure out if you two crossed paths. 15 years ago. Where were you? What were you doing? I thought back. I was in college. University of Washington. Junior year, I think. I lived off campus, worked part-time, and didn't have much of a social life. Think harder, Frank said. Parties, classes, jobs. Anyone you met, even casually. Someone you talked to once and forgot about. I closed my eyes, trying to pull up memories from 15 years ago. Faces, names, places. It was like looking through fog. Then something surfaced. A library, late night studying, and a guy who was always there, sitting a few tables away. Tall, dark hair, quiet. We'd talked a couple of times, borrowed a pen once, shared a table when the library was crowded. He'd introduced himself. I couldn't remember the name, but I remembered his face. I opened my eyes. I think I might have met him, I said quietly. In college, at the library. We'd talked a few times. Nothing serious, just small talk. Frank nodded, unsurprised. That's all it takes. He learned your name, maybe saw your student ID, got your social security number somehow. People are careless with that stuff, especially in college. He opens an account in your name, uses it to move money, figures no one will ever connect it to him. I felt sick. So I was just a name he could use? A random person? Probably. But here's the thing. He's dead now. The account's still active. And eventually, someone's going to notice. It could be the IRS, could be the bank during an audit, could be someone else who knew about the account. When they do, you're the one whose name is on it. I stared at him. What do I do? Frank leaned back. You got 3 options. 1, you keep quiet and hope no one ever finds out. 2, you go to the authorities, explain everything, and hope they believe you. 3, you hire a lawyer, try to get the account closed and the money seized before anyone comes asking questions. None of those options sounded good. What would you do? I asked. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'd go to the authorities, sooner rather than later, because if this money is dirty, and it probably is, you don't want to be holding it when someone comes looking. I left the coffee shop feeling worse than when I had arrived. I drove home in a daze, parked in my usual spot, and walked up the stairs to my apartment. That's when I saw it. A piece of paper, folded in half, tucked under my door. I bent down and picked it up, my hands shaking. Unfolded it. Written in neat, printed letters. We know about the account. Don't touch the money. We'll be in contact. No signature. No number. Just those 2 sentences. I stumbled inside, locked the door behind me, and stood with my back against it, breathing hard. Someone knew. Someone besides Frank, besides the bank, besides my mom. Someone was watching, and they wanted the money. I called Frank immediately. He answered on the first ring. Yeah? Someone left a note at my apartment, I said, my voice shaking. It says they know about the account. There was a pause. Read it to me. I did. When I finished, he swore softly. Okay, lock your doors. Don't answer the phone unless you know who it is. I'm going to make some calls. To who? I asked. People who know about this kind of thing. If someone's coming after you, we need to know who and why. Sit tight. I'll call you back. He hung up. I stood in my kitchen holding the note, reading it over and over. We know about the account. We'll be in contact. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the building, every car passing outside made me jump. I kept checking the locks, peering through the peephole, expecting to see someone standing in the hallway. No one came. By morning, I was exhausted and terrified. Frank called at 8. I talked to some people, he said. Best guess, whoever left that note is connected to Castellano's old operation. They know about the money, and they want it back. What do I do? I asked. You go to the police. Today, right now. Tell them everything. Show them the note, the account records, everything. You're not safe as long as you're sitting on that money. I hung up and stared at the note again. Then I grabbed my keys, my folder of documents, and drove to the nearest police station. Inside, I told the desk officer I needed to report something urgent. She looked bored until I said the words money laundering and threats. Then she got a detective. His name was Marcus Hall, a black man in his 40s with tired eyes and a calm demeanor. He listened to my story without interrupting, occasionally taking notes. When he finished, he leaned back in his chair. You're saying someone opened an account in your name, deposited almost $3 million, and you had no knowledge of it until a few days ago? I nodded. And now someone's threatening you? I showed him the note. He read it, his expression darkening. We're going to need to bring in federal agents, he said. This is bigger than a local case. I felt my stomach drop. Federal agents? He nodded. If this money is connected to criminal activity, and it sounds like it is, the FBI will want to be involved. Don't worry, you're a victim here, not a suspect, but we need to do this right. 3 hours later, I was sitting in a small, windowless room with 2 FBI agents. They asked the same questions over and over. How I knew David Castellano, when I found out about the account, had I touched the money, did I have any idea where it came from? I answered honestly, every time. I didn't know. I hadn't touched it. I'd only found out days ago. After what felt like an eternity, one of the agents, a woman with sharp eyes and no-nonsense tone, leaned forward. Miss Brennan, we believe you, but we're going to need to seize the account as evidence. You understand that? I nodded. I don't want the money, I said. I just want this to be over. She exchanged a glance with her partner. It will be, but it's going to take time. In the meantime, we'll check on you periodically. If you receive any more threats, call us immediately. They gave me a card with a direct number. I left the federal building feeling hollow. The money was gone, seized as evidence. I'd never see a cent of it. But I was also free. Or at least I hoped I was. 2 days later, I got another note. This one slipped under my door while I was at work. I found it when I got home, folded neatly, just like the first. I opened it with shaking hands. You made a mistake. You shouldn't have gone to the police. I called the FBI immediately. They sent someone over, collected the note, told me they'd increase surveillance. But I could see it in their eyes. They couldn't protect me around the clock. I wasn't a witness in a trial. I was just a woman who'd stumbled into something dangerous. That night, I packed a bag and went to stay with a friend across town. I didn't tell anyone where I was going except the FBI and Frank. I changed my routine, took different routes to work,
checked over my shoulder constantly. I was living in fear. A week later, Frank called. They found something, he said. Who? The FBI. They traced the money. Turns out Castellano was involved in something big, international trafficking. The money in your account was being cleaned. You were a mule, just a name on paper. I felt sick. Am I in trouble? No, Frank said. They know you're innocent, but there are other people involved, and they don't like loose ends. You need to stay careful. I stayed with my friend for another 2 weeks. Then finally, the FBI called. The case was closed. They'd arrested 3 people connected to Castellano's network. The threats would stop. I could go home. I did, cautiously, nervously, but the threats didn't come. The notes stopped. The phone calls never happened. Slowly, carefully, I started to rebuild my life.
3 months later, I received a letter from the FBI. Official, stamped, formal. It said the investigation was complete. No charges would be filed against me. The money had been seized and would be used to compensate victims of the trafficking operation. I was free. Officially, legally free. But I didn't feel free. I felt haunted. By the money I never had, by the life I almost lost, by the randomness of it all. A guy I'd talked to once, 15 years ago, had used my name to hide a fortune, and it had almost destroyed me. I went back to teaching, back to grading papers, back to my small, ordinary life, and I was grateful for it, because ordinary, I realized, was a gift. I never wanted to be extraordinary again. So here's my question for you. What would you have done? Kept quiet and hoped it went away? Gone to the police immediately? Tried to keep the money? Tell me in the comments. I need to know I'm not crazy for how I handled this. And if you want to hear more stories like this, real stories about ordinary people caught in impossible situations, hit that subscribe button because trust me, life is stranger than fiction.